For spine-chilling nighttime driving encounters, sinister secrets revealed on haunted roads. Claire's heart thundered in her chest as she gripped the steering wheel. The hum of the engine was drowned out by the cold dread creeping along her spine. It was another late-night shift at the hospital, another night spent helping people who'd been dealt the worst cards life had to offer. But tonight felt different. As she glanced in her rearview mirror, a glint caught her eye. A hulking black truck had appeared, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a hunter's spotlight, tracking her every move. The truck loomed large, casting shadows that twisted ominously around her. She shook herself, chalking it up to fatigue. Just a coincidence, she told herself. Could be anyone. Yet, even as she pulled into her driveway, unease settled deep in her gut. The truck idled 2 houses down, its engine burbling like a beast lurking in the night. Her breath quickened. She wrestled the door open, but the hair on the back of her neck prickled, snapping her back to reality. All the whispered stories from the neighbors echoed in her mind. Families disappearing, strange noises at night, rumors that made Maple Creek feel more like a ghost town haunted by lingering shadows than the postcard-perfect suburban haven it pretended to be. Claire leaned against her front door, trying to steady her rattling thoughts. The comfort of home felt like a fragile bubble that could burst open at any moment. Shaky hands grabbed her phone, and she dove into countless articles about the town's unsettling history. Each click revealed spine-chilling tales of lost children and mysterious figures haunting the streets, connections that twisted through her consciousness. Names and dates bled together, forming an unsettling tapestry of homes built on secrets. The same families, reappearing in the dusty pages, their stories intertwined with hers, echoing through the block with sorrow and despair. She whispered the names as if conjuring their ghosts, foreboding weight settling in her throat. Days turned into nights, and every time Claire crossed paths with that sinister black truck, a gnawing sensation gripped her heart. She spotted it parked outside her children's school, lurking just beyond the reach of comfort and safety. Each day that fear was met with her husband's reassurances filled with tender affection. "You're just tired, love. It's all in your head." But realizing they shared a street with shadows grew heavy on Claire like a wet blanket. Then, one particular shift flipped her world upside down. The truck was closer than ever, inches behind her bumper, pressing an invisible weight onto her chest. Panic surged through her as she rounded a corner, adrenaline blitzing her focus. No longer another car on Maple Creek's quiet streets, she was being hunted. Her heart raced as paranoia clawed at her sanity. It all came crashing down as she pieced together truth from fiction. The truck belonged to a familiar face, a neighbor who often waved at her during community cookouts. He was supposed to be friendly and harmless, but every reason she'd trusted him lay shattered at her feet. What if he was the monster hiding behind a smile? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her grip tightened as she approached her home, footsteps heavy and unsure. The walls of her perfect life began to close in around her, the truck revving behind her, an evil pulse striking against her fragile sense of normalcy. The revelatory dread of her suburban peace slipping away, she knew she had to confront the truth. Even if it terrified her to the core. The road ahead stretched narrow and unyielding, leading her directly to a reckoning with the dark heart of Maple Creek, where twisted lives and whispered secrets lay just beneath the surface. Claire could only brace herself, the last remnants of her safety dissolving into the chilly night air. The night air was thick with tension as Claire forced herself inside, leaving the outside world behind. She bolted the door shut and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. The shadows within her home felt heavier, almost as if they had already begun to creep into her life. She needed to feel safe, but paranoia was clawing at the edges of her mind. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, yet each inhalation felt shallow, stifled by creeping dread. The stillness of her home only amplified the ominous rumble of the truck outside. Its presence was visceral, gnawing at the corner of her mind, a reminder that life could tip into chaos in an instant. Then, Claire's phone vibrated, the shrill notification shattering the silence like a gunshot. She snatched it up, heart racing. Her stomach knotted as she read the unexpected message. It was from Sarah, a close friend from the neighborhood. "You've got to be careful, Claire. I saw him last night. I think he's up to something." The word sent a rush of ice through her veins. "Who?" She frantically typed back, fingers trembling. She needed more than just vague warnings. "Just be aware. He's watching." "I don't know how I know," the text replied. Claire's breath hitched. She could feel the walls closing in, the familiar horror stories flooding her mind with images of darkness so thick, it swallowed reason. The thought that someone was watching a predator hidden among the familiar faces was a relentless gnawing weight in her chest. An uneasy glance out the window confirmed her worst nightmares. The truck still sat there, a hulking silhouette against the moonlight, its engine suddenly falling silent. There was something unsettling about the change, it felt too intentional, too predatory. Claire grabbed a chair and pushed it against the door, her heart racing uncontrollably as she paced the living room. She didn't want to think about her kids if they could feel this oppressive air creeping in. Just the thought twisted her stomach further. When she finally dared to peek through the curtains, she was met with an abyss of shadows. The truck's driver's side door opened, and the figure that climbed out was unmistakable. It was Greg, the neighbor who had always smiled and waved, but now he appeared like a ghoul stepping out of the grave. She couldn't convince herself it was just fatigue any longer. What was he doing here? Claire felt her limbs grow cold. The man who had once been the embodiment of safety now stood as a harbinger of fear. She backed away, slipping into the kitchen, scanning for anything that might serve as a weapon. Her fingers brushed against the knife block and she plucked one out instinctively. Suddenly, there came a sharp rap on the door. "Claire!" Greg called, his voice drowning in a false cheer. "I just wanted to check on you. You okay?" The sweetness in his tone was laced with something sinister. Panic unfurled within her, the choice was burning in her gut. Should she open the door? Would she risk it? "Not now, Greg!" she shouted back, heart pounding. Laughter echoed from outside, a low, menacing chuckle that felt unnatural, almost mocking. "Claire, you're being silly. It's just me. Let me in. We should talk." Was it a game to him? Whispers about the neighborhood swelled in her mind. What secrets lay buried beneath Maple Creek's surface? Where had all those children vanished to? Every story felt newly alive, coming back with a ferocity that clawed at her sanity. She pressed her back to the cold wall, breath hitching. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, another message lighting up the screen. "Claire, you need to get out of there. Now." The finality of those words sent chills cascading down her spine. What had she stumbled into? With the knife gripped tightly in her hand, Claire felt the weight of the world resting on her shoulders. The shadows were deepening, and she could hear Greg's mocking voice growing closer. What horror awaited her if she didn't leave? Choking on her fear, Claire gathered her wits. It was time to face the truth hiding behind Maple Creek's smile. Without turning back, she steeled her resolve, the door trembling under the weight of her next decision. Would she confront the monster, or slip into the night like the others before her? With her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest, Claire clutched the knife firmly, its cold steel digging into her palm. Every calculated breath felt like a battle won against the encroaching hysteria, but she knew this was only the beginning. She could still hear Greg's unsettling laughter echoing through the night, a taunt that slithered underneath her skin. She had to decide fast. The idea of sliding through the back door flashed in her mind. If she failed to act now, he would worm his way inside with a smile that held no warmth. But still, part of her flickered with the irrational hope that this was all just a misunderstanding. Another knock came harder. "Claire. I can hear you." Greg's voice boomed, sharper now, demanding and direct. "You're making this a lot harder than it has to be." Terror surged inside her. He was done pretending. What would it take one last push before he burst through? Gripping the knife, she instinctively crept toward the back door, breath held tight. Her thoughts raced. What if he had accomplices? What if she shattered the fragile silence of the night by stepping outside? With the chaos outside her door, was this truly her escape, or a path to the same fate that echoed in her nightmares? Suddenly, the shadow under the front door shifted, and she froze. Someone was pacing outside, his figure sliding across the thin layer of moonlight. Why wasn't he leaving? When her phone buzzed again, she nearly dropped it from the shock. "It's me, Sarah. Please listen. I'm coming over. Stay quiet." Claire felt hope jolt through her veins. But instead of relief, doubt wrapped around her heart. What if Greg was already aware of Sarah, an unrealized threat lurking dangerously close? Quickly, she texted back, "No. Stay away." But before she could hit send, the walls trembled with another pounding knock. She nearly yelped. "Enough games, Claire. Open up." The scrape of wood creaking against wood made her jump. Panic ignited, fueling her adrenaline. In a desperate move, she turned to the tiny window above the sink, hoping for a glimpse of anything but terror. What she saw sent shards of ice through her. A shadow stood on the sidewalk, another figure cloaked in darkness, watching. "Who?" she muttered, voice barely above a whisper. The figure shifted, and she flinched as she saw the unmistakable glint of light reflecting off something metallic. Was that a knife? The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Greg wasn't alone. They were closing in. "Are you really going to hide in there, Claire?" Greg's fervent tone rattled her bones. "We could talk this out. No need for all this drama." With no time left to lose, she bolted for the kitchen door. Every fiber in her being screamed at her to escape, yet as she inched towards the exit, the air felt thicker, stifling. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched from every angle, unnerving and invasive. Glancing back out the window, her heart dropped further. The second figure was gone. Just vanished into thin air. Where had they gone? Was there a trap waiting on the other side of the door? And then she heard it, laughter, deep and grotesque, just beneath her hearing. A chorus of sinister voices snickered, almost as if they were sharing a joke at her expense. Was this what had happened to those who had vanished entombed in the whimsical madness of Maple Creek? The back door loomed ahead, but what lay beyond? With one hand on the handle, Claire felt a wave of courage surge through her. She couldn't hide forever. But would stepping into the night mean finding freedom or confronting the depths of fear she had only begun to grasp? Nothing was as it seemed. With her heart thudding, Claire opened the door, ready to step into the unknown, oblivious to what she might awaken in the shadows. Was this the moment she could reclaim her story, or would she plunge deeper into the darkness? The door creaked open, and a cold gust of wind rushed past, wrapping around Claire like icy fingers. Shivering, she peered into the darkened world beyond her home, instinct pulling her closer to the abyss. The muted glow of a distant streetlight barely penetrated the shroud of night, leaving everything cloaked in an unsettling silhouette. "Come on out, Claire," Greg's voice thundered from behind her, dripping with impatience. "You think you're safe in there? You have no idea what's waiting outside." She hesitated, fear gripping her tight. Taking a small step forward, she scanned the area again. The sidewalk lay empty, the shadows now a haunting reminder of the mysterious figure that had just stood there. Where had they gone? A strangled laugh echoed from behind her as Greg continued, "You can't run forever. You have to face your demons, sweetheart." Heart pounding, Claire reminded herself that there were more significant things to fear than just Greg's threats. Glancing over her shoulder, she noticed that the hallway behind her was now bathed in darkness, as if the shadows had come alive, eager to consume her. Then she felt a presence creeping up her spine. She turned quickly, half expecting to see the second figure back in sight, yet it was just the night. She swore she could hear whispers pooling just outside her reach. The street seemed to thrum with an oppressive energy, thickening the air around her. "Get back here!" Greg roared, breaking her spell. Without thinking, Claire stepped outside, the cold seeping through her shoes as she hit the ground. The night air felt like 1,000 eyes staring down at her, judging and luring her into the dark depths of an unknown fate. A sudden noise shattered the tense silence, a rustle from the bushes near her feet. Claire jumped, knife raised, ready for anything. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice bouncing off the distant houses. Silence responded, but the laughter persisted in her mind, curling at the edges of her sanity. She turned back to the door, but Greg had emerged now, shadowy and monstrous, bathed in the faintest light from inside. A twisted smile stretched across his face, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Going somewhere?" Fear surged through her, fueling her instincts. She dashed down the driveway, sprinting toward the street even as she barely registered the sound of hurried footsteps behind her. The pavement felt unforgiving underfoot, and each breath burned, the reality of her vulnerability prickling at her skin. Just as she reached the end of the driveway, her heart dropped. The street was empty, but it was not a comfort. The second figure emerged from the shadows across the road, silver glinting in their hand, a knife, just like hers. "You shouldn't run from the truth," the figure said softly, voice dripping with a haunting familiarity. Claire's stomach churned, a pit of dread pooling within her. How did they know her? Who were they? Before she could process her fear or even think about running back, the figure took a step closer, and Claire was paralyzed. "You're not the one they're looking for." "What are you talking about?" Claire demanded, knife raised but trembling now. The figure's smile widened, revealing an unsettling sincerity. "You're caught in a web much larger than you understand. They're after you, but it's really a game." Greg now stood at her side, his laughter echoing menacingly. "You should listen when they speak, Claire. You're about to find out how deep the rabbit hole goes." The second figure shifted slightly, and Claire caught a glimpse of something in their eyes, an understanding, a bond. "You have less time than you think. They're coming," and just like that, the laughter returned, swirling around her, much louder, much closer. Claire's breath quickened, heart racing faster than she ever thought possible. Did she dare ask what was the real game her life had become? With fear tightening its grip, she dashed towards the shadows, ready to uncover the truth or face what lay waiting in the darkness. What had she awakened in the night, and who was truly pulling the strings? As she turned the corner, a chilling thought struck her. How deep did her entanglement with this unspeakable horror really go? Claire darted into the narrow passage between two houses, her breath hitching in her throat as she pressed her back against the rough brick wall. The night air was thick with tension, clinging to her skin like a second layer. She could hear the rush of footsteps, Greg's hurried pace, mixed with the ominous echoes of the second figure's laughter, bouncing off the houses and swirling like a consuming fog. "Claire." Greg's voice cut through the night, sharp and jagged. "You can't hide forever. They're coming for you." She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to stifle the panic rising in her chest. They? Who were they? There was an almost magnetic pull to the shadows before her, a beckoning that felt both terrifying and strangely familiar. She had to know what lay ahead. Slowly, she peeked around the corner. The street, barren and dimly lit, stretched out like an endless maw. The distant streetlight flickered, casting an eerie glow that barely reached her. Everything felt unreal, like a twisted nightmare where the boundaries of her fears had bled into reality. "Do it." The second figure's voice broke through, cool like ice. "Or you will regret it." Claire's heart raced at those words, ice creeping into her veins. Regret? Was she already regretting her choices by stepping into this madness? She had turned her back on darkness before. Could she really afford to do so again? Suddenly, Greg burst into sight, wild-eyed, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. You can't escape the truth. He lunged forward, reaching for her. She flinched, adrenaline surging, propelling her deeper into the shadows. She stumbled into a narrow alley, the reek of dampness and decay clawing at her senses. Echoes of her own footsteps filled her ears, each sound amplified as she sprinted further into the gloom. Claire! Greg shouted, his voice echoing agony and rage. Why did it feel like the night was alive, taunting her? Each shadow extended, reaching out as if it had its own heartbeat. Everything was working against her. The walls closed in, the darkness thickening. Just then, a glint caught her eye from the corner, a flash of silver before it disappeared. Curiosity clawed at her throat. She took hesitant steps toward it, the thrill of dread coloring every movement. The alley opened up into a small courtyard, moonlight pooling in the center, illuminating something odd lying on the ground. With trembling hands, she advanced and bent down. It was a knife just like hers, but deeper and darker. She sensed it had a history, a weight to it that felt wrong, sinister. As her fingers brushed the handle, a jolt shot up her arm, scorching her mind with visions, flashes of fierce struggles, anguished cries, and an unyielding rage that felt oddly familiar. Don't touch it. The voice sliced through the air like a blade, echoing from the shadows. It was the figure. They stepped into the faint light, revealing a face cloaked in darkness. You don't know what you're getting into. Claire jerked back, adrenaline and fear battling within her. Who are you? I'm part of this, like you, they replied, almost regretfully. And they will come for you, Claire. They will come for both of us. The silence fell across the courtyard, and Claire's heart raced, a heavy, throbbing sound in her ears. The atmosphere shifted, charged with a promise yet unfulfilled. The sense of urgency pulsed, a deepening, pervading imminent dread. Run, was all the figure said before they turned back toward the shadows. Or it's all over. As their presence faded, all Claire could hear was the rhythm of her own breathing and the creeping sense of doom clawing its way back into her thoughts. She had become ensnared in a web of secrets, fragile connections, each moment whispering of escape yet drenching her in fear. Catching her breath, she steeled herself. The knife glimmered like an unsolved riddle. Did it belong to her? And worse yet, what truth awaited her when she uncovered the meaning behind it? With trembling fingers, Claire picked up the knife and swallowed her fear. There was no turning back now. A race against time had begun. As she walked back into the shadows, a whisper in the wind echoed her deepest fear. You have no idea what fate awaited her at the end of this path. Would she face the darkness and emerge, or would she be swallowed whole? The knife felt heavy in Claire's grip as she turned back toward the alley, its blade gleaming with a sinister promise. The courtyard, once a refuge, now felt like a trap, and the shadows pulsed around her. Every inch of her screamed to run, but adrenaline kept her rooted. Claire Greg's voice echoed again, more distant now, tinged with something that pressed like a weight on her chest. She peered into the darkness, the outline of the alley stretching into an ominous void. The pull of the shadows and the promise of escape intertwined, each threatening to swallow her whole. A flicker of movement caught her eye, something darting just beyond the edge of the moonlight. With every nerve ending screaming at her to flee, curiosity wrestled with fear. Show yourself! She shouted, her voice barely louder than a whisper against the night. Nothing. Her heart thudded erratically as a chilling wind swept past her. It felt alive, like a fleeting spirit brushing her cheek, making her shiver. What were those shadows hiding? As dread curled in her stomach, she made a decision. It was time to confront whatever this was. With the knife clutched in hand, she stepped deeper into the suffocating darkness. Each step echoed, a metronome of impending doom, until she reached the alley's end. It opened into a wider space, and she could hear it, a soft, almost melodic hum that seeped through cracked walls and stagnant air. The sound wrapped around her like a warm blanket, oddly inviting yet tauntingly sinister. Claire, the whisper was back, but this time, it didn't just echo in the air, it reverberated in her mind. A flicker of understanding washed over her, and she froze. Something was coming. She can feel it. Fear slammed into her, a heavy weight that threatened to pull her under. The shadows writhed as if stirred by some unseen force, dark tendrils reaching for her. The hum grew louder. With a shaky breath, she turned toward the source. Eyes wide, Claire scanned the area. Then she saw it, a blackened figure emerging from the gloom, gliding silently as if it were a whisper, just a breath away. The figure looked up, and in the reflections of broken glass around, Claire caught a glimpse of shimmering eyes, hollow and hungry. "Do you really want to know the truth?" The voice dripped with amusement, sinister and smooth. "Truth? What truth?" Claire demanded, scrambling for steadiness, gripping the knife tighter. "The truth about what you are running from and the knife you hold," the figure said, drawing closer, its presence heavy enough that she could almost taste the iron in the air. She recoiled, backing up against the wall. "I'm done with games. Just tell me what you want." Claire shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. "I want you to uncover your past," the figure replied. "The knife holds more than you realize. Once you wield it, you'll understand the power it holds." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her feet. The shadows shifted and flickered like flames. A cacophony of whispers surrounded her, drowning out the sound of her own heartbeat. "You can't escape it. You are part of this night." "What do you mean?" Panic surged through her, her legs trembling. "You're saying this is my fault? What happened to Greg?" Before the figure could respond, a sharp wind howled through the alley, carrying with it a haunting wail that sent ice coursing through her veins. The knife felt alive now, pulsing in her hand, a heartbeat resonating with every fear she held. "Find the truth or pay the price," the figure warned, fading back into the storm of shadows, its eyes glowing like embers as they disappeared. Claire's mind raced. She was losing control of the situation. The ground throbbed, and the whispers crescendoed, morphing into a sinister chant that clawed at her sanity. Something deep within urged her toward the knife, the very source of her dread. As she gathered her resolve, the back of her mind screamed, "What if you can't handle what you find?" With newfound determination, she plunged the knife into the ground, marking her resolve to face whatever darkness awaited her. Maybe it would illuminate her path. Maybe it would lead her to her end, and as shadows closed in around her, she whispered a shaky prayer, hoping she would find the strength to confront whatever truth awaited in the abyss. Or would she lose herself entirely? In the encroaching dark, only one certainty remained: her fight had only just begun. The knife quivered where it dug into the earth. An electric prickle coursed through Claire's fingertips. Those shadows shifted again, as if disturbed by her bold act. Heart pounding, she released the grip on the weapon, her eyes darting around, waiting for something, anything to happen. Then silence wrapped her like a shroud. The whispers faded, replaced by a suffocating quiet so thick it pressed at her eardrums. A single drop of sweat slithered down her spine. "Where are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Would her question spark the specters? In a flicker of movement, the shadows surged forward, swirling like a storm caught between dimensions. She couldn't breathe, fear locking her throat as the darkness enveloped her. The phantom figure re-emerged, now surrounded by a swirling mass of echoing voices that hissed secrets just beyond comprehension. "Did you think you could wake them?" The figure gestured towards the swirling mass, its eyes aflame. "They are restless, and hungry." "Who are you?" Claire's words came out in frantic bursts. "What do you want from me?" "I am a messenger of forgotten tales," it hissed, and the shadows writhed in agreement. "You seek truth, but it comes with a price. Your past echoes in this darkness. Dig deeper if you dare." Suddenly, the ground shuddered again, and from the depths below came a rumbling, like a heavy breath awakening from slumber. The knife pulsed with a violent energy, vibrating against the concrete. "Enough!" Claire shouted, panic narrowing her vision. What happened to Greg? The figure hovered, a dark smirk framing its shadowy face. He knew too much. He sought illumination, just as you do. But shadows can only show what they choose. A shriek cut through her, high-pitched and shrill. Claire spun around, heart racing. From the darkness, a figure darted past her, a glimpse of a pale face, wide eyes that screamed distress. She felt the chill in the air flicker like a light bulb about to die. "Greg?" She screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. But the figure vanished into the abyss, thwarted by the shadows. "Stop! Show me!" Claire shouted, wiping away the terror that threatened to overwhelm her. The knife surged again, and this time, a bright light erupted around it, illuminating the alley briefly. The shadows shrieked, fluttering back as the light encroached. In that moment, she saw it, a faint outline of Greg, bound by thorny vines that twisted like barbarians, dragging him into the darkness. "Claire! Help me!" His voice pulled at her heart, raw and pleading. "I'm coming. Hold on." She lunged toward the image, but it flickered and vanished, collapsing back into the chaotic shadows. Her breath came in ragged gasps. What do I need to do?" she gasped, facing the figure again. "The knife. It's the key," it urged. "Strike where the darkness meets the light, and you will uncover the past. But be cautious. Some doors should remain shut." With a surge of defiance, she clutched the knife, feeling its intensity resonating with her heart like a drum of war. "I'll find him," Claire vowed. "I'll dig through the darkness, I won't let him fade away." Cold laughter echoed through the alley, mingling with the whispers that began to return, warning her in hushed tones. "Only if you're ready to unearth the truth and face the horrors that come with it." The ground trembled again, stronger this time, making the shadows writhe in anticipation. "Prepare yourself, Claire. The truth will bring everything to light or to ruin." She gritted her teeth, steeling herself, feeling the weight of what was coming. With every ounce of courage, she raised the knife toward the pulsating dark. And then, in a flash of insight, she realized it wasn't just about finding Greg. It was about unearthing the monster behind her own past. As she prepared to strike, an overwhelming dread loomed over her, reminding her this wasn't only about survival. This path would unravel secrets she might never be ready for. What awaited her beyond the shadows? Would she find Greg, or something far worse? The knife hovered just above the ground, its edge gleaming in the dim glow. Claire could feel the pulsing energy from within, thrumming against her palm, urging her to act. The shadows writhed menacingly, dark tendrils creeping closer, as if waiting for her next move. She had little time. "Do it!" the figure hissed, its voice echoing like rolling thunder. "Embrace the darkness and the truth." Claire's heart thudded in her chest. "If I strike, what will happen?" She glanced back at the figure's smirk, sensing the twisted anticipation it exuded. "Pain, revelation, liberation," it whispered like a sinister lullaby, pulling her gaze deep into its fiery eyes. Taking a breath that felt like swallowing glass, Claire swung the knife down, piercing through the murky veil of shadows. Instantly, a searing light erupted, bathing the alley in a stark brilliance that felt both freeing and intoxicating. The whispers morphed into screams, reverberating around her, filling her ears with a cacophony of torment. Images spiraled through the light, scenes from her past flashing like old film strips, laughter with Greg, their secret hideaways, the terrible day they lost everything. "Claire!" The voice of her brother cut through the chaos, clearer now. "Help me. Please. Greg!" She cried out, her own voice trembling, desperate. She could feel the warmth of his presence even through the churning energy that surrounded her, but the shadows retaliated, rolling in thick waves, clawing at the light. Claire gripped the knife tighter, rooting herself in the moment. She wouldn't let them take Greg again. The light intensified and the figure just behind her shifted, flickering uncertainly. "You can break the ties," it urged from a distance. "But beware, the truth may unravel more than you bargained for." With those chilling words echoing in her mind, Claire focused her energy and thrust the knife deeper, aiming for the heart of the darkness. The shadows hissed, retreating as she pressed onward. What lay before her was not merely a path, it was a doorway, an abyss that stretched beyond understanding. Then, all at once, the murmurs changed. They transformed from anguished cries into guttural laughter, filling the air with an overwhelming sense of dread. As she felt her feet slipping away from solid ground, a blast of icy wind swept through the alley, wrapping around her, constricting her like serpents ready to strike. "You think you can save him? You don't even know the truth." The air grew thick, pulsating with dread woven from horrors best left buried. Shadows surged and recoiled, slipping through the light only to swirl back to form grotesque faces, distorted and mocking. They taunted her with phantoms of her past misdeeds, each one more twisted than the last. "Forget him. He's lost to the abyss." They chanted, their voices cold and taunting, chilling her resolve. "No!" Claire shouted, feeling anger rise within her, like a fire igniting against the oppression of night. "I won't lose him. Not again." She pressed harder, and as she did, the light flared brighter, illuminating the faces that flashed before her. Each one was a fragment of her memories, choices made in fear, betrayals hidden beneath layers of guilt. They were all tied to the shadows dancing before her. The light screamed as it shattered the darkness, and for a single heartbeat, everything stood still. Then crash! It shattered like glass, exploding outward into a vortex that drew Claire in, pulling her toward a yawning void. The knife fell from her grasp, clattering against the concrete as darkness closed in, heavy and suffocating. Fear wrapped around her, squeezing tight. What have I done?" And then, a voice emerged from the dark, chilling her to the bone. "You've opened a door, Claire. Now you will face what lies beyond." As the shadows twisted and a monstrous figure emerged, Claire braced herself, uncertain of what horror awaited her. In that breathless moment, she realized the shadow wasn't just seeking revenge, it was a reflection of her own buried fears and sins. What had she truly awakened in this darkened alley? Would she find Greg in its depths, or face a terror she could never escape? Claire felt the void around her thrum with a life of its own, as if every shadow had eyes watching her every move. The monstrous figure loomed larger, its grotesque shape undulating like smoke-given form, bathing Claire in an unnatural chill that seeped into her bones. It didn't just want to destroy her, it wanted to consume her, to strip away her very essence. "Face me, Claire," the figure growled, its voice a low rumble, like the grinding of ancient stone. "Embrace the truth you've buried." Every fiber of her being screamed to run, but she stood frozen, tethered by fear and an aching need for answers. Greg's cries echoed in her mind like a haunting melody, pulling her deeper into the shadows. "What truth?" she demanded, trying to sound defiant, but her voice wavered. The figure stretched its arm towards her, the shadow curling and solidifying into a grotesque hand. "The truth of your darkest secrets. The choices that led you here." Flashbacks exploded in her mind, moments of hesitation, decisions weighed by fear and loss. She saw Greg before the darkness took hold of him. She saw herself standing by as he slipped into that abyss, paralyzed by indecision. "I tried to save him," she shouted, unwilling to accept blame. The figure cackled, the sound reverberating through the alley like thunder. "Save him? You let him fall. You loved him, yet you turned your back when it mattered." "No." The denial erupted from her as the shadows pulsed violently, writhing in response to her anguish. The memory of that day, the sight of Greg trying to reach the top of the crumbling wall, the cracks appearing beneath him flashed before her eyes like a nightmare replayed. "I couldn't do anything." The air felt oppressive, each breath laced with regret as her heartbeat echoed in her ears. I thought I could change it. The figure leaned closer, and Claire felt its icy breath, like death's whisper brushing against her skin. You're grasping at fantasies. In truth, you only sought to protect yourself. As the truth twisted around her, the knife, a mere shard of her past, clattered to the ground again. How could she fight back when her very essence felt like a lie constructed from silence? The laughter of the shadows grew louder, drowning her once more in chaotic hysteria, filling her ears with the voices of all she had lost. Images of betrayal erupted in spirals. Friends she had pushed away. Greg's fading smile. Each moment anchored by an invisible thread of guilt that tightened around her heart. With a will she didn't know she possessed, Claire tore her gaze from the grotesque figure. I can't choose what happens to the past. I only want to save Greg. Do you truly think you can change what has been done? The figure hissed, its eyes glowing menacingly. You must embrace the darkness or perish with it. Just beyond the figure, Claire could see the glimmer of light, fracturing through the shadows, offering a glimpse of hope. The choice lay before her like a knife's edge: turn back or leap forward into the dark. She could either succumb to despair or fight through to the light for Greg. Determined, Claire took a step forward, feeling the weight of the abyss shift. I will not let your darkness take me. I'm coming for Greg. But as she pressed deeper into the shadows, they surged toward her, enveloping her in a torrent of screams and whispers. You'll regret this. They shrieked. Greg! She cried, her voice reaching out into the depths of the darkness. Pain flared inside her, igniting a fierce need to shatter the memories binding her, and then, just as the weight of fear threatened to crush her, a new presence stirred within the tide of shadows, familiar yet unsettling. Claire this time, the voice was not a scream but a plea, trembling in recognition. She turned, heart racing. What awaited her in the void? Was it Greg or another deception masked in her own fears? Would she be able to stand against the truth long enough to find him? The shadows shifted like restless spirits, creeping closer around Claire as the familiar voice called her name. Claire, the call held a weight that anchored her amidst the chaos, pulling her toward the edge of the darkness. It was Greg. Greg, she shouted, nearly choking on the emotion swirling in her throat. But where was he? Heart racing, she focused harder, determined to pierce the veil of shadow that engulfed her. I'm coming. As the chaos swirled, she could feel the monster's disdain weave through the air like a noxious fog. It loomed large, whispering secret truths tainted with lies. But Claire's resolve ignited brighter, forged from the anger of loss, the shame of regret. She refused to let the shadows snuff out her will to fight. Embrace the darkness, the figure taunted, its voice slithering over her skin like ice. You belong here, Claire. But you have to surrender to it. For a moment, doubt clawed at her, but with a fierce breath, she shook her head, grounding herself in the very reason she fought. No. I'm fighting for Greg. For the truth. That declaration sent a shockwave through the gloom, a flicker of brightness breaking through the dark, illuminating a path she hadn't noticed before. She could see it clearer now, the outlines of familiar places, etched in a gallery of memories she tucked away. The playground where they shared childhood dreams, the old willow tree where they carved their initials. Each image resonated, echoing in her heart. Claire. The voice again, more tangible now. Desire surged within her. Follow me. A figure emerged from the shadows, the outline familiar and filled with warmth. Greg, she whispered, stepping forward. The shadows scowled, struggling against the light. Each step felt electric, fueling her with courage that pushed back against the oppressive weight of despair. Keep coming. The specter of Greg reached for her, his once pale face now illuminated, filled with that familiar affection that felt like home. Hope poured through her, urging her to bridge the gap. With every ounce of determination, Claire stepped forward, finally breaking through the barbed haze of darkness. As her hand clasped his, warmth filled the void, the corrupted shadows recoiling like scalded snakes. Together, they confronted the ghastly figure shrouded in sorrow, its grotesque countenance twisting in agony. "No!" it shrieked, shrinking back, shadows losing their form as light flowed like a river, crashing into their depths. "Enough of your games. Show yourself!" Claire shouted, voice warrior-like, filled with defiance and the power of their connection, an unbreakable bond fueled by love and shared memories. As the shadows dissipated, the figure morphed, revealing layers upon layers of yesterdays interwoven with memories, a mirror reflecting the fears they held within. "You cannot escape the darkness of your past," it hissed. "No!" Claire shouted. "I can confront it." With Greg at her side, she plucked the knife from the ground where it had fallen, holding it tight. It infused her with strength, resonating with the heartbeat of truth, a weapon forged from pain and reclaiming control over her fate. With a sweeping motion, she aimed the blade toward the heart of the swirling darkness. In an explosive clash of illumination and shadow, the knife embedded itself, the light erupted, slicing through the darkness like a brilliant sunrise. A crescendo of screams echoed, contorted faces fading into nothingness as truth unraveled, revealing the sinister web woven of their buried fears and failures. "Greg, we did it!" Claire shouted as the specter faded, taking shadows with it, revealing the truth she fought through. But as the clarity washed over her, an alarming sensation began to grow, gripping her chest. The realization of the ghosts they had faced tore through her heart. "Not all shadows are lost," said Greg, his voice filled with the gravity of their past. "Some truths will haunt you until you learn to let them go." As the aftershocks of their battle subsided, Claire felt the weight of the world begin to lift. No more whispers, no more shadows lurking just beyond, only the promise of a future painted in brilliant light. Gazing at Greg, she saw not just the person she loved but the mirror of herself she couldn't hide from any longer. "Let us go home," she said, hands steadying his once more. Together, they stepped forward into the light that enveloped them, into the promise of healing. Nothing would ever be the same, but she had faced her darkness and survived. Hand in hand, they walked into the dawn, the warmth of a new beginning rising from the scars of their past, bridging the chasm between fear and hope, and just like that, Claire knew she would fight for more than the memories. This time, she would cherish them, forging new ones, with every step shaping the narrative of their lives, moving forward one free of shadows. But as they reached the edge of Maple Creek's light, a chilling whisper echoed from the dwindling darkness behind them, warning of the fragility of peace restored. It sent a lingering shiver down her spine, a reminder that the past was never truly buried. Now, dear viewers, this is where I need you. You absolutely need to subscribe right now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive story waiting in the shadows. Smash that like button with all your might to help the algorithm spread this tale. And I want to see the comments section light up with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think lies in wait for Claire and Greg? Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this thrilling saga unfolds. Your support is what keeps these tales alive.